Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out People of Reddit. Story 1. Adventures as a cart pusher. So a long time ago I was working at that place with the blue vests as a cart pusher. I was actually homeless for a few months and this was the only thing available. Anyway, I didn't mind the job. I listened to music all day, no one really bothered me and I was getting exercise. However, lots of people would do lots of little things that would piss me off and I became very adept at getting petty revenge. Most of this came from strategically placing carts near people's vehicles. There are two instances where I would do this on a regular basis. The first is people would park their cars in this big empty space where we were supposed to load the carts. This made my job difficult because loading them in the front of the bay meant dodging customers. So a few times this would happen, I'd bring in loads of carts and run them along the side and behind the vehicles so that when they came back they had to move the collection of carts put in the way to leave. Secondly, people would sometimes park in front of the cart corrals spread throughout the parking lot, making it difficult to do my job. The way they were designed was for us to load up on the back and push the row of carts forward, which takes all of 2 seconds. If we have to take the carts out backwards it takes much longer. So I'd always push the carts as forward as they go without actually hitting the vehicle. I was trying to annoy, not get fired for damaging someone's car. And place a few carts behind their vehicle too. Lastly, there was one situation where my anger went beyond petty revenge, and that's when people would leave kids in their car. Now policy is I radio in and they page the vehicle overhead. Of no response, then we call the police. But I would skip all that and just call the police as a concerned citizen and let them know I found an underage child left alone in a vehicle. Now if the kids were like 12 or older and playing on their tablets or phones or whatever, then obviously I didn't bother. But when I saw babies and kids around 5 being left alone, it boiled my blood. Story 2. IT Petty Revenge. My property mate has decided that they can pay what they want with the bills. It's a long cluster F. Installed things to try to monitor everything. Bonehead doesn't realize all these things use the net, which I control. And their house's internet. We'll have to hash this out because moving is harder than dealing with this person's. But in the meantime, I've been randomly blocking the Pornhub. I'm not sure why, but it seems that router sees, or saw a lot of Pornhub. If this really gets me going, I'll set up the pie hole, and reroute all adult requests to religious sites that scream for repentance. They are still using a Win7 PC if you wonder why they don't just VPN. Story 3. Getting an abusive manager fired. This was back 20 years ago. Fuck, I'm getting old, and I was working at a Canadian Tire, CT, in my hometown with my best friend, and boyhood crush. My buddy and I worked in seasonal and we had 2 managers, one who was amazing, Val, and another that was an absolute bastard, Harriesh. Harriesh loved to demean his staff and humiliate them amongst their peers. The guy was probably in his 40s, but he acted like a bully from an elementary school. He'd call everyone buddy, I still cringe at that word, but he would also call everyone a faggot, or stupid, or gay, or whatever other bullshit he could come up with. One time he said this about my best bud: look how his butt wiggles, I wonder how many dicks that faggot took today. Like seriously demeaning shit. No one seemed willing to fight back with Harriesh, even Val seemed cowed by him. Now I loved Val, and I loved my buddy, too much. I was also gay as fuck, and I was sick and tired of watching my asshole manager use anti-gay slurs on my best bud. I also know my rights as an employee, and so I started to record his bullshit. I captured the date, time, the bullshit I saw, my signature and a witness signature in a small notebook that I kept with me. Man, I wish I'd had an iPhone back in the day. I kept this as secret as possible, but young guys gossip and it started to get around. One time Harriesh came storming down the main aisle at me and I only had a second to hide the book before he started to berate me and demanded I give him the book. I told him I didn't know what he was talking about, but also that if he didn't do anything problematic then he shouldn't need to worry, right? His face turned a shade of purple I wasn't sure could exist in nature and he stormed off. After that I started tearing out pages of the notebook at the end of every shift and keeping them at home. I also hid a spare notebook in the storage area, which was a horrific mess all the time. You could barely find what you were looking for, let alone a small hidden notebook. I told guys that I trusted where the hidden book was and that they should record anything they saw in the book when I wasn't on shift, with witnesses. I also told them to always take the book out of the hiding spot and get the record rather than show random fellow workers where the spot was. I don't know if they followed this rule. Harriesh responded, not by being nicer, but instead by being more aggressive, more insulting, and more homophobic, though, ironically, never to the actual gay dude in the store. At one point he was seen tearing the storage area apart looking for the notebook. Though, even if he had found it, he would have only found the most recent pages as I tore out any new attestations on my next shift. After a couple of months of this I had 25 to 30 solid accounts of Harriesh engaging in bullying of the staff and even other management, never attested by management. I didn't trust them. Val approached me and asked me if I was aware that there were rumors going around about me collecting evidence about Harriesh. I remember thinking that this could be the moment they tried to fire me, or the moment I became a legend. 19-year-olds think the silliest things. I told her, yeah, and I'm going to give them to Mr. X, the store owner, tomorrow. I'll give you a copy too. Her eyes went wide and she grinned. The next day I went to Staples and photocopied all the pages of notebook that I had. I knew Harriesh was going to be away that day, and so I made 4 copies, one for Mr. X, one for Val, one for the staff room, and one for the desk of my department. On the copies I wrote a short letter to Mr. X that Harriesh was engaged in harassment of his staff, that harassment had been witnessed and was systemic, and that if he didn't respond appropriately my parents would hire a lawyer and sue. I distributed the copies and left. Apparently the uproar at the store was quite the sight. I never saw it because Val stepped in and protected me. She desperately wanted Harriesh gone and this was her shot. The managers and Mr. X turned on Harriesh and he was fired. To this day I wish I could have been a fly on the wall of that meeting. For the next 6 months I became Val's golden child, but it also became apparent that things were weird now. Managers didn't like having me around as much, they seemed guarded, and some staff members had liked Harriesh. I decided that the weird wasn't worth it for a minimum wage job, and so I left to work at Staples, the same one I photocopied the notebook pages at. I vividly remember my last shift because I actively did nothing, relaxed on the bags of soil, so comfy, and enjoyed the sun. No one said a thing. Epilogue: I personally never saw Harriesh again, but a friend did. He had moved on to work at a Home Depot after some years of unemployment. Apparently, second-hand knowledge through the management grapevine is pretty sketchy. He looked to be in pretty bad shape, apparently, and he hid the moment my friend saw him and they locked eyes. The idea that him being a homophobic shit, who got taken down by a gay man, and who had to survive on practically nothing for a while still warms my little homo heart to this day. Story 4. Accuse me of stealing right back at Cha. I went to a particular international sunglass shop situated inside a mall. I was looking for a new pair and spent about 10 minutes trying a few on. There were some other browsers in there at the time, and 2 staff, a young retail worker and a manager. I left without buying anything but remained perusing around the shopping center. I was across the aisle about 15 minutes later, outside the sunglasses shop, about 20 meters away, when the young worker, a woman, came literally running up to me asking to see inside my bag, asking if I stole something. I was like girl WTF but told her I didn't steal anything, and opened my tote bag to show inside. She saw my sunglasses case in there and demanded I open it, insisting I had shoplifted. I sighed and opened my sunglasses case to reveal my obviously worn and used sunglasses and repeated I didn't steal anything and she had no right to demand to see my personal belongings. She would not quit and said that she knew I had stolen something and now demanded to go through my bag. I told her to go fuck herself and walked off. As it so happens I had worked for this particular sunglasses chain for years when I was a student and sent an email about the incident to the regional manager. Other than being absolutely ridiculous in general, the more I thought about it, the fact the girl was so insistent that I had shoplifted to the point of breaking every company protocol, and also, the law, was weird to me. I mentioned to him to really check the cameras, because either the shop girl actually was a racial profiling idiot, or the manager wanted to get her out of the store so he could do something nefarious. The regional manager called me a few days later to discuss what happened, and when I asked him if he checked the footage he audible sighed, the sound of someone who could not be more over something lol, and said that I was right. As soon as the manager sent the worker out of the shop he started manipulating the sales software and stealing cash. It wasn't the first incident of that happening and he'd been chasing that up over the past few days after my complaint. The manager was terminated. I also got free new sunglasses. Story 5. I don't even have to do anything. Like the title says. I left my roommate after realizing they were just using me. They only cared about their image and the way things look. Most of what they have, I helped them get or they've stolen from me. I was their source of energy. Whenever they had a bad day and saw I had a good one, they'd argue just to bring me down with them or say people have been saying bad things about me. After leaving and wanting everything to themselves to assert power, they finally got what they want. Now they get to pay all the bills. They wanted to claim everything as theirs, so now it is. They stole a lot from me during moving. Like a flower Lego set. I'll mention why I bring that up later. They don't know how to even use Legos much. They wear lots of makeup to maintain their look, trends, and planned on getting top surgery this month even though they can't save $1 for more than a week. After leaving, I've found myself happier. I'm talking to my family and friends a lot more. Opening up more. Dude, I even got back to my hometown church. I feel love and peace for the most part, but I haven't totally let go. It's gonna take a bit to let go, just going through the motions. Since I left, I notice they've looked more stressed. Gaining weight and wrinkles in their face looking deeper. Hair falling out. They don't seem as happy after getting what they want, and losing some things after forcing others. They're currently looking for roommates to help them pay bills. That Lego flower set was given to me by a group of friends. They don't know much about Legos. But they really love flowers, which is why they wanted it. But like the rest of their life, because they decided to lie, cheat, steal, and hurt to get what they want, that too shall fall apart. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.